सुरक्षित उतार दिया है और इसी के साथ अपनी पहली ट्रांस अटलांटिक उड़ान सफलतापूर्वक पूरी कर दी। इधर आज यहाँ स्कारलेट क्रूज में ब्रिटेन की टीम पहुंची।
What's your pleasure, Mr. Cotton?
The box.
Take it. It's yours. It always was.
Friendos, it is I, that Dante, that D4T3. Today we are going to continue on with the Scarlet Gospels, and I guess I'd better finish that up while I can. It's too damn hot in here for me to dress up, so I didn't dress up today, unfortunately. I wanted to, but it's too damn hot, so it's kind of chill, mellow, casual reading of the Scarlet Gospels. Announcements. I have a Discord up if you want to Discord the Discord and do the Discording Discord. I'm on chat if you want to chat. If you want to lurk, it's good. I'm all good with lurking. Lurking is cool. What else? Probably going to see a few different things happening in the coming next few weeks. I'm going to get into a little bit of beginner drawing, just shapes, because I want to learn how to draw. I don't know how to draw. And I gotta get back into playing some music. I miss that. So that's going to be happening sometime. I also downloaded Hellblade: Sinuous Sacrifice, and I'm going to play through that again because I love that game. Ninja Theory's just killed it with that game. So we're going to see a stream of that probably in the near future. Also, thank you so much to my Periscope people who tune in. A lot of you are tuning in for this, and I really appreciate you hanging out. It's awesome. So, mad shouts to the Periscope folks. And I think with that said, let's get a quick summary in. When last we left our intrepid hero, Harry D'Amour, he and his gang of ne'er-do-wells were trying to escape hell. And the last scene that we were left with was Lucifer battling Pinhead. And let me give you a little setup for that. So, for those who weren't here for the last stream or didn't catch whatever, I have highlights on my Twitch channel if you want to catch like the backstory and everything. But generally speaking, what has happened is Pinhead, better known as the Hell Priest, has decided he wants to take over reigning hell. So he pretty much slaughtered all the, mainstays of hell's, not armies, but, leaders and stuff like that. He went down, he found Lucifer's castle, for lack of a better word, fortress, I guess. He broke in, he got to Lucifer's, core room, the main private room, and he found who he thought, or who we think, Lucifer on his throne, but dead. So somehow, despite God's commandment that he reign in hell forever, he managed to kill himself, from what the story's telling us. So, the Hell Priest, I'm going to call him Hell Priest, because I don't like calling him Pinhead. He doesn't like being called Pinhead, and I don't like calling him Pinhead. The Hell Priest rips off Lucifer's armor and puts it on himself. Just cuts himself all up, so he can fit in the armor. And he started to go back up and away from, I think he was near the entrance to Lucifer's fortress. And then apparently the real Lucifer shows up and is pissed off that, Hell Priest is presuming to take over, and they get into this big battle. So just massive battle going on. Lucifer's throwing all his, powers at him, but this armor that the Hell Priest has put on has shielded him from Lucifer's power. So when we last left the very last scene, the Hell Priest just bested Lucifer. So here we are at chapter 11 of, I think, book 2 or 3. And it goes a little something like this. The husk of flesh that was now the morning star reached out and caught hold of the Hell Priest's foot. Enough, he pleaded. Give me the next page. For a moment, the Hell Priest simply stared down at his adversary in disbelief, and then he began to struggle to free himself. But Lucifer, despite his injuries, had no intention of letting the Hell Priest go. He had reached up with his other arm, which had acquired in its shattered state the uncanny fluidity of a tentacle, and seized the vestments he'd once lain down to die in. With his grip on them secured, he lifted himself up and stood face to face with the Hell Priest, his body still pierced in countless places, blood running freely from his wounds, gathering in rivulets that coursed down his legs. Lucifer drove his hands into the Hell Priest's abdomen. The Hell Priest screamed as Lucifer took hold of his guts. The weapons the Cenobite's body had produced to bring the devil down withered now, as the Hell Priest recalled energies that had fueled them in the hope of putting up some defense against Lucifer. But the devil had him in his grasp now, and he wasn't about to let his wounder go. Lucifer reached still deeper within the body of the Hell Priest, taunting him as he did so. Spit out some magic, fool! He dragged a length of gut out of the Hell Priest's belly and pulled it, uncoiling the demon's entrails. And stop that wretched den. I thought you liked pain. He let go of the gut, leaving the loop to fall between the Hell Priest's feet. Why would you have these? He ran his bloody broken fingers over the nails in the demon's head. If it wasn't for the pleasure of the pain. He then balled his fists, snapping the broken ligaments of his fingers back into place. He brought thumb and forefinger to the Cenobite's face and selected one of the nails from the creature's cheek. He pulled. With a little persuasion, he worked it out and revealed that more than half of the nail's length had been buried into the Cenobite's bone. The Hell Priest was too stricken to do anything by way of reply. Lucifer dropped... Oh, hold on a second. Derp. That's better. So let's continue. I keep forgetting to do that. I don't know why. Lucifer dropped the nail and chose another, working it free and dropping it again, then moving on to a third and fourth. Blood ran down the grid of scum that covered the Cenobite's face. He was no longer screaming. Whatever agony he'd felt as his entrails had been torn from him was inconsequential compared to the defacing he was now enduring. Lucifer was plucking the nails out randomly, his pace quickening. Finally, the demon spoke. "Please," the Hell Priest begged him. A protest you've no doubt heard 1,000 times. "I have. You traveled across the wastelands of hell and battled Lucifer. You are unique, Cenobite. And yet your life is in my hands and you're reduced to a simpering cliché. It's... yes?" The Hell Priest shook his head. Lucifer replied by plucking another nail and another and another. Desperate to stop him, the Cenobite began his confession again. "It is who I am." Lucifer paused to look at the nail he'd just pulled free of the Cenobite's face. "This rusted piece of metal? My apologies. You should have it back." He tore away the collar of the vestments and drove the nail into the priest's throat, hammering all the way in with the heel of his hand. At that, Harry felt the Cenobite's thaumaturgic grip on his body released. Harry fell to the ground and sucked in great gasping breaths. Even his lungs had been in service to the priest's whim. Harry collected himself, and content in the knowledge that he had witnessed the end of this scene, and indeed the end of an era, and potentially a war that might have spread over heaven and earth, he began to crawl in the direction of the nearest felled wall. He had no need to watch the killing blow. He only wished to be again with his loved ones. Give me a second here while I move a few things. Okay. As Harry made his way out of the sanctuary, the Hell Priest reached up to Lucifer's face and would surely have put out the angel's unwounded eye if he'd had the chance, but Lucifer was too quick to lose the advantage. He batted the Hell Priest's hands away. "You had your moment," he said. "Now it's gone, and it won't come again. Say your prayers, child. It's time for bed." Harry exited the cathedral. He could hear all manner of sounds. Shouts were heard from demons watching the final struggle of the Hell Priest and Devil, moans unintended from the dying, and other sounds that perhaps emanated from Lucifer's attack on the Cenobite, the tearing of fabric and of flesh, the breaking of bones. Harry clambered up and over the last heap of bodies and came in sight of his exit. There were still demons lingering around the threshold, apparently uncertain of whether they should venture in or not. Harry wove his way between the loiterers and out into the open air. There his friends were waiting for him at the edge of the lake. "Harold, thank fucking Christ," Kaz said, as he ran to his friend. "I fucking told them I was going to give you 5 more minutes, and I was coming in to get you." Harry took in the scene. Despite the colossal tree that had been placed across the lake, and the hordes of demons who scrambled to cross it as they fled from the infernal war zone, the lake was a bit more placid than it had been when Harry and his cohorts had first ventured around the cathedral, and the Kuoto had been turning the waters white in its frenzy. The sight of the dark lake and the starless sky above it was wonderfully soothing after the slaughterhouse scenes they'd left behind them. Kaz walked Harry toward the water's edge and stood staring out at the tabula rasa before him. Done dancing with the devil, Demore? Dale asked. Never, Norma said, answering for Harry. She was more right than he cared to admit. What the fuck happened in there? Lana said. It's not important, Harry said. Here's something you'll only hear me say once. Let's follow these demons. Norma laughed. That's the 4th time I've heard you say that. I missed you, Norma, Harry said. Let's get you home. The harrowers turned toward the makeshift bridge, where the large number of survivors had decided to retreat from the cathedral, many with blood streaming from their wounds, and still carrying a knife or a sword to defend themselves if the need arose. But there was little antagonism among the exiting crowd. They were too anxious to be out of the cathedral, away from whatever was happening now, inside, to be picking fights with one another or anyone else for that matter. As Harry and his harrowers moved across the bridge, from the cathedral, Lucifer's booming voice could suddenly be heard. I was an angel once, and I had such wings, oh, such wings. Everyone looked toward the cathedral, where the cords of light now danced against the few walls that remained. But they are just a memory now, he continued, and I am left with a pain I cannot endure. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? The repetition of his question was painfully loud, even to those standing outside the cathedral's walls. The building, for all the pillars and buttresses that supported its immensity, shook as the fallen one's voice grew louder. Stone dust fell in fine, dry rains, the escalating growl of stone grinding on stone. I was finished with my life, the devil said, finished with this hell I built. I was dead and happy, but it seems I cannot be certain of death until I bring all of this down on our heads, and there is no hell to call me back again. Hell is finished, do you understand? If you have other places to go, then go while you can, because there will be nothing left when I am done. Nothing! By the time the quartet of harrowers, plus Norma, began their return journey away from the cathedral, all of Lucifer's audience had grasped the profound seriousness of their situation and were departing by any means available. There were fissures in the walls now, rising from the ground like black lightning, the flying buttresses crumbling as the connecting stonework fractured and fell away, the capitulation of each buttress putting the central structure in even greater risk of complete collapse upon itself. What happens when we get off the island? Kaz said as they went. How do we get home? Harry threw him a despairing glance. I don't have a fucking clue, but that old demon woman mentioned something about getting home, so I think we need to pay her a visit. As far as I can tell, we did make it out alive. But will we make it out with our sanity intact is the question, Norma said. All I know, Lana said, is that I'm taking up alcoholism and when this thing is over. Make it a double, Dale said. The exodus from the cathedral was a chaotic flood of frightened demons, many of them, in their haste to be away from the failing building, and even more urgently from the creatures inside, were running through the shallows of the lake so as to avoid the crowded beach. It was only a matter of time before their plunging through the water drew the attention of Kuoto. The beast surfaced suddenly in a great explosion of foaming water, and seemingly dislocating its lower jaw so that it protruded much further than the upper, it easily scooped up 20 demons in one pass. Then it threw back its head, tossing its catch down its black throat, and plunged into the lake again, only to surface less than a minute later to do the same thing farther down the beach, closer to the front door. Its appearance did little to dissuade many of the crowd from running out into the water almost immediately, preferring to risk being taken by the beast than to be anywhere near the cathedral. Their frenzy was understandable. The roof was beginning to collapse now, churning up dust that was illuminated by a flickering blue light from within. There was one piece of good news for the harrowers. The newly constructed bridge that had been placed across the lake by the army of the Unconsumed made crossing back to the beach easier than having to fight for a boat. It wasn't an elaborate structure, but with the Kuoto busy digesting the remaining demons, Harry and company crossed the body of water and reached the safety of the beach without incident. They ran at speed, Kaz carrying Norma all the way. When they finally touched ground, it was not far from the demon encampment from which they had originally launched their boats. We have to go to the village, Harry said. The old lady will be there. You all stay here and look after Norma, said Dale. I'll go. It isn't far. I'll go with you, Kaz said. Harry, Lana, and Norma found a place up off the beach under the shelter of what looked to have been a small copse in better days, now reduced to a little more than a few desiccated leafless trees. "We'll wait here for you," said Harry. "And if you don't come back in an hour or so, I'm going to come looking for you," Lana said. "I don't trust that old woman." Kaz and Dale headed toward the camp while Harry did his best to make Norma comfortable on the uneven ground. "What are you thinking, Harry?" Lana asked. "Ha!" Norma barked. "That's a can of worms." Harry's heart warmed. Norma was back in his arms, bruised but alive, and hearing her familiar maternal tone again made him feel like things just might work in his favor for once. He turned to Lana and spoke. "Going through that," Harry said, gesturing toward the compromised structure, "makes me feel a little used up inside. But everything's going to be all right, right?" The cathedral's demolition continued, though it had slowed now that its walls were in several places little more than heaps of rubble. "I don't think that's how life works," said Lana, "but at least it's something you can depend on from the moment we enter this fucked up world. I think babies cry when they're born because they're born with the knowledge of all the terrible shit that's going to happen to them. That's why I never had kids. Every life is a death sentence. We just forget it later in life, like dreams we lose the second we wake up. Whether we worry about it or not, the shit's still going to fly. The important thing is we're here, at least for now." "Reassuring," Harry said. "All the more reason we get out of here as fast as we can." Lana looked along the beach. "I lost sight of the boys. Hopefully they're getting some help from that old bitch." There you are, witness." The Hell Priest appeared suddenly. He walked off the bridge and made his way over to them. The condition of his body so ragged and his face so utterly devoid of its former symmetry and elegance that unless he had spoken, Harry would have passed him by unnoticed. Now they stood face to face as the crowd turned past them, on up the beach and away into the darkness. Damore realized then that his tattoos hadn't let off any alarms in hours. Maybe he'd burned them out. Whatever the case, they'd betrayed him. He crossed in front of Norma to protect her. Lana shut up, readying herself for a fight. "Jesus Christ," Harry said. "You look like hell." "My witness, my faithful, unerring witness." "It's going to make a hell of a book, Pinhead." "It is a shame that you will not see it to its end now. You live in the dark, Damore, and that is where you will remain," the Hell Priest replied. And so saying, he raised his left hand to his face, whispering in an indecipherable incantation. His words ignited in the cage of his blackened fingers. "Still more tricks," Harry said. "They've done wonders for you so far." He moved to the right of the demon and took 2, perhaps 3 steps down the beach to better position himself for a fight. But the Hell Priest had other plans, and against his will, Harry felt himself once more lose control of his body. "Fucker!" Harry shouted. "Harry?" Norma called out. "No!" Lana screamed as she advanced. "Away, cunt," the priest said to her, "or I'll see to it that your punishment far outweighs your crimes." "Norma, Lana, let it go," Harry said. "This is between me and Pinfuck." Harry's eyes began to prick. "Christ, what are you doing?" His heart quickened, not beating but hammering, and with each hammer blow the pricking worsened, as though invisible hands were steadily pressing white-hot needles into his eyes. He tried to blink, but his lids refused to close. The Hell Priest had turned to watch him, Harry's eyes catching a gleam of the cold blue light that Lucifer was emanating. As the pain increased, darkness crept in from around the edge of Harry's sights. "Look your last, witness." Though the priest still had magic, the strength of his workings had clearly left him, and the working on Harry's body was nowhere near the paralyzing thrall the priest had held over him in the cathedral. Harry fought the magic and reached out, making contact with the Hell Priest's cold, wet body. His fingers found something to hook themselves under, though whether it was torn flesh or a portion of the Hell Priest's stolen vestments, Harry neither knew nor cared. "What more do you want from me?" Damore said. "What am I to you? I need my eyes. I'm a detective." "You should have thought about that before you turned your back on your duties." The darkness encroached at ever greater speed, and Harry could now no longer take in the Hell Priest's face in a single glance. but needed to scan it through the iris that was closing his vision down. He could see nothing in the demon's face that suggested there was any reprieve to be had. There was only the cold light reflected off the fallen one in his eyes. The rest, what had once been a kind of perfection, was ruined. "This has been your life," said some cold, steady voice in him, apparently immune to the terror that had confounded the rest of his thoughts. "You've wandered among evil things, seized by a sickly intoxication that allured you to play the role of hero, while all the time you've been indulging in addiction." This wretched clarity was more than he could bear. Why now, of all times, did his brain choose to make such a damning judgment? It became a loop that now receded behind the ever-darkening terror, and then every last pin drop of sight was gone. The noise of the demon's chaotic departure became more ragged after a time, as what had been a solid flow eventually diminished. The wounded came now, many gasping for breath as they did their best to climb the beach, often moaning with pain, some even weeping quietly. It was one such demon's whimpering that woke Harry. All track of time was lost as he lay there on the stones, the side of his face stinging from the wounds he'd sustained wherever and whenever he'd landed. "Hello?" Harry said. "Lana! Norma! Anyone?" "Harry!" Harry heard Lana's muted voice calling out to him. "You're awake! Oh, Jesus!" Her voice was followed by the sound of her approaching footsteps. "Lana, is that you?" "What do you mean? I'm right here." She was at his side now, touching his face. Harry's eyes were open, but he could see nothing. "Fuck! I think the fucker blinded me." "Thank God you're awake," Harry heard pain in Lana's voice. "Harry, it's horrible." "Hey, don't worry. Not my first time being blinded by a demon." "No," Lana said, close to weeping. "Not that." Harry stopped dead. "Lana? No," Harry said. "Lana, tell me Norma's okay." Lana had given in. Harry could hear her crying now. "Lana, for fuck's sake, tell me what's happening." "She's still alive, but Christ, she is a mess. I tried to stop him once he knocked you unconscious, but I couldn't move, Harry. He'd thrown some fucking words in my face and I was down. All I could do was watch while he..." "What?" "He fucking violated her, Harry. Right in front of me, and he made me watch. I couldn't even close my eyes. I'm gonna fucking kill him, I swear. I'll rip out his fucking heart. Where is she?" "I'll take you." Lana put her hand beneath Harry's elbow. Harry talked as they walked, some to break the silence in the air, mostly to drown out the noise in his head. "Something had to give sooner or later," he said. "The number of times I should have been the one in the body bag, but somehow always unharmed. A few broken bones, never anything serious. Norma used to say I had an angel looking out for me. She said she'd seen it sometimes when I came to visit her, but I guess it had other business today." "Easy now," said Lana. "I got it," Harry said, climbing the slope of the beach, all the while loose stones were sliding away beneath his boots. "Slowly." "How much further?" 2-3 strides, then it starts to level off again." "Can you see Norma?" "Yeah, she's lying where I left her." "How is she?" "She's still breathing. I knew she wouldn't let go till you came back. Thank God you woke. It's just a few more steps." "Norma! Norma! It's Harry!" The old lady murmured something. "Lie still," Harry heard Lana instruct her. But Norma had fashioned a life of creating her own laws, and she wasn't about to start taking orders now. "What did he do, Harry? Tell me. No lies. Just tell me. What did he do?" Harry heard the pain in her voice. It hit him like a blow to the gut. "I always wondered what the world looked like through your eyes," he said to her. "Now I know." "Oh, child." Lana took her hand off Harry's elbow and stepped back to allow Harry to settle down into a cross-legged position. Norma immediately reached up and found his face as easily as she would have if she'd been sighted. She stroked his unshaven cheek. "So you're not hurting?" No, but you are, aren't you? Lana told me the fucking..." "Don't waste your breath, Harry. There's other stuff we need to talk about. Just you and me." Lana, would you give us a moment? Absolutely, Lana said. I'll be waiting nearby. Just yell if... They'll hear me in Detroit if there's a problem, Harry said. That's Harry. At that, he heard the fading sounds of her feet crunching on the stones as she left Harry and Norma to share their last words together. She might be your soulmate, Harry. Come on, Norma. We both know I don't get one of those. People are complicated. Of course, a lot of the time they're putting on faces, at least when they're alive. But once they're dead, they stop all that nonsense. So you'll get to see the truth. And it's so much richer and stranger than you'd ever guess from having looked at their masks. She was no longer speaking in the raw, hesitant fashion she had been using when Harry first got to her. Now she talked in an urgent whisper. I felt all the instructions with a man named George Mbesen. What instructions? For what happens once I'm gone, which will be very soon. Norma, you're not going... Yes, I am, Harry. And you do neither of us any favors by wasting time with platitudes. My body's meat, pure and simple. All Pinhead did was hasten me toward my exit, for which I am not ungrateful, to be honest. I need to die a while, get my appetite for life back before I choose new parents, and set back into the game with all that I've learned hidden away at the back of my soul. It's going to be quite a life next time around, knowing all I know. I wish I could be with you. You will be. You will. No doubt. Would I lie to you? She said with genuine indignation. We'll be together. Different faces, same souls. So don't grieve. Just take up where I fell off. You mean helping the dead find their way? Damn right. What else are you going to do with your time? Harry allowed a short, disbelieving laugh to escape his throat. You knew it'd be me. No, I didn't, actually. That's a complete revelation. I can't help the dead, Norma. I know nothing about them. You knew enough to get down into hell and save my sorry soul. And that ended great for all of us. You think this is a fuck-up? Of course it is, Harry said. You're dying. Harry, she soothed him, stroking his face. Listen to me. Things are never the way they seem. You did what you thought you should because you're a good man. You came down into hell to find me. Into hell, Harry. There aren't many people who drive to Jersey for their own mothers, never mind venturing into the abyss for some old blind, half-crazy woman. You're not... Listen to me. It wasn't about me in the end. It was never about me. I was just the bait. I don't understand. I don't either, if it's any comfort. But think about it. Think of how things have changed down here, in this place itself. Obviously, and within you, I'd be willing to wager. All because you chose to come looking for me. So somebody set all this up? Is that what you're saying? Not at all. That's magical thinking. But you said you were bait. And that means there had to be a fisherman, doesn't it? Norma took a long moment to think this through before she replied. We're all in it together, Harry. We're all pieces of the fisherman. And now I know that sounds like a bullshit answer, but you'll see. When you start to work with the dead, everyone's complicit. The most innocent little kitties, babies who live a day, an hour, they still have a hand in things, even their own deaths. I know that's very hard for you to get your head around right now, but take it from someone who spent a lot of time with death. She paused, and Harry heard her make a half-suppressed grunt of pain as she shifted her bruised body. I'm still gonna kill him, he said. I'm fine, Harry, she said. You don't need to worry about me or him. He's just one of the lost and afraid. Everyone is so fucked up, she laughed lightly. It isn't really funny, she went on, the laughter subsiding. The world soul is sick, Harry. Crazy sick. And if we don't each do our part and try to get to the root of its pain and burn it out, then everything is for nothing. So what do I do? I can't answer all your questions, Harry, Norma said, her reply tinged with an unsettling remoteness. They're not all going to get answered. You need to accept that. How about we split the difference? I'll acknowledge it, but I won't accept it. Norma reached out and gripped Harry's arm, seizing it with accuracy and a strength that astonished him. I'm happy. Just us. You really are happy? Harry said. He tried to keep the doubt from his voice, but unknowingly failed. Of course, Norma replied with each syllable her voice grew weaker. I'm gonna miss you so goddamn much, Norma. I love... She didn't have the strength to finish. She trailed off as the breath that had carried her words ceased with a barely audible click in her throat. He didn't need to speak her name and have his call go unanswered to know that she'd taken her leave. He reached out and tentatively in hope of finding her face so as to close her eyes. To his surprise, his fingers found her cheek with the same uncanny accuracy he had seen her demonstrate. The image of what he was doing appeared in his mind's eye, fixed like a painting, attempting to close the eyes of a blind woman after death. It was easier than he'd wanted it to be. Her eyelids obeyed the slightest touch of his fingertips and closed forever. Book 4, Fallout. Lucifer, once the most beloved angel in the incandescent dimension that mortal men called heaven, exiled from its glories and its powers by his creator, thrown into a place of rock and darkness, where in defiance of his creator's torments, he'd made a second heaven, or at least attempted to, which mortal men had come to call hell, stood amid the wreckage of his cathedral and planned for the second time his farewell to life. He wouldn't make the same mistakes this time as he had the first. There'd be no cathedral to serve as a place of pilgrimage for those who wished to meditate on the injustice and tragedy of his story, nor would the underworld be populated with the bastard children of the damned and their tormentors, the latter rebels like himself, thrown down from heaven for conspiring with him to rule from its throne. Enough, he murmured to himself, and then, raising his voice to a bellow that could be heard at the farthest reaches of hell, Enough! The shout caused the stones on the beach to leap up as if in terror, then drop and rattle down the incline toward the lake, whose surface was also stirred into agitated motion. Kaz and Dale had failed to return, and rather than wait at the side of their departed den-mother, Harry and Lana set off in search of their friends. They had just reached the Azil's encampment when Lucifer unleashed his shout, and the noise brought the old dreadlocked demon woman out of one of the shacks. She had a knife in her hand, and her locks were in disarray as though she'd been interrupted in the middle of something important and physically demanding. Upon seeing Harry and Lana at the edge of her property, she waved the knife in the air with wild threat. "What you do here?" she demanded. "Have you seen our friends?" Lana asked. "No, please now, going," the demon woman hissed. "But your tone is so convincing," Harry said. "Really?" Lana said to the demon woman. "I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I look around, do you?" And so saying, she headed straight for the demon's tent. The demon woman's response was to spit full force in her face, the saliva stinging Lana's skin and burning it so viciously that she stumbled back and clutched her face in agony. "Fucking bitch!" Lana said. "Lana, what's happening?" Harry asked. The demon woman seized her advantage without hesitation. Clutching her knife, she first sliced up across Lana's chest, and then came back down across her belly, spilling blood with both attacks. Before she could wound Lana a third time, she retreated clumsily into the dying fire near the tent's entrance, turning up the red-hot embers hidden beneath the ashes. She smelled the stink of boots cooking and felt the heat on her soles, but she wasn't going to stumble back out into the path of the old demon woman's knife, so instead Lana kicked the embers in her direction. The demon loosed a stream of curses as they sprayed in all directions and met with her flesh. "Don't worry, Harry," Lana said. "I got this." The demon, as if in response, took 2 unhindered steps before she came at Lana again, but this time Lana was ready for her and dropped down to avoid the swing of the old woman's blade. Then Lana threw herself at the demon and grabbed her by neck and knife arm, shaking the latter till the demon released her knife. With the demon woman unarmed, Lana released her scaly arm and put both of her hands to the old woman's neck. "Where are our friends, you ugly old cow?" the demon woman hissed by way of reply. The wound she'd given Lana hurt, and the pain fueled her rage. "Fine, I'm just going to kill you," she said, half meaning it, "and throw you in the fire, then find them myself." "Crazy woman, man! Slaughterer of demonation!" I'm happy you've been paying attention, cunt, Lana said, tightening her hold on the woman's throat. The old demon woman's strong, bony fingers pulled at Lana's hands, desperately trying to loosen Lana's grip. But the half of Lana that truly intended to strangle the life from the demon had her pressing her thumbs side by side against the demon woman's windpipe. The old woman started to make a nasty, rattling gasp, and her hands lost their strength and slid away from Lana's, whose sanity prevailed as she finally let go of the demon completely. The old woman dropped to the ground, using the first available breath to begin cursing Lana again. Lana picked up the old woman's knife and tucked it through her belt. "Sticks and stones, bitch," she said. "Come on, Harry." All right. Let me do something real quick. Time out. Time out, time out, time out. I will be right back. Okay, and we're back. Let's see, Lana and Harry are trying to leave hell. So this is where we're at. Wait, Harry held Lana at bay, turned into the direction from which he'd last heard the demon woman's hissed curses, and addressed her. "You said something about worms leading the way out. Tell me what that means. Are they wormholes we can travel through? Answer me!" "You die now is what meaning," the demon woman said. The toe of Lana's boot met the demon woman's mouth, and the demon flew back several yards, landing in a twisted heap. "Wrong," said Lana, rubbing her face to clear it of the last bit of the demon's toxic phlegm. Lana then grabbed Harry's arm and led him into the tent. There was a small fire burning inside. The smoke vented through a hole in the middle of the roof, and by its light she saw Kaz and Dale, kneeling with their backs to the fire, staring at the blank wall. Their hands were crossed behind them as if they were tied, though they weren't. Lana went to them. "Christ! Guys, talk to me!" "Are they alive?" "Yeah, she has them tied up or under some sort of trance, but they're alive." Lana grabbed Kaz's hands in an attempt to establish contact and break the manacles of his mind. A shudder passed through his body by way of response, and he made a muted, wordless sound, as though talking in his sleep. Lana went down on her haunches with her back against the shack wall and looked at Kaz's face. His eyes were wide and his mouth closed tight. He stared straight ahead of her, beyond her, his gaze unshifting. "Kaz, it's Lana. Can you—" "Hey, you fucking guys," Harry broke in. "We've got to go. Lucifer is making a hell of a bark, and I don't want us to be here when he decides to bite." Kaz made the same wordless noise he'd made before. Lana moved her open palm back and forth in front of both Dale's and Kaz's eyes. Neither of them blinked. "Assholes! Listen to Harry. You're not tied even up," Lana said. "That old bitch just got you believing you are. And you're not gagged either. Are you hearing me?" Again the muted noise from behind sealed lips. "It's a trick, that's all," Harry said. "Some stupid incantation. Kaz, your tattoo should be able to get you out of this one." Harry and Lana waited for some response. None came. "Nothing," Lana said. "What the fuck are we gonna do? We can't carry them out like this." "Wait," Harry said. "Their eyes are open, yes?" "Yeah," Lana said. "They're not even blinking. It's creepy as hell." "Are they staring at anything in particular? Is something in their line of sight?" Lana glanced at the wall in front of Kaz and Dale and saw that painted on the tattered sheet of canvas from which the wall was made was a quartet of hieroglyphs, arranged so close to one another that they almost touched. Dale's and Kaz's eyes were fixed upon the glyphs. "Ha!" Lana said. "Harry, you're a goddamn genius. There's something painted on the wall, and they're staring right at it. What should I do?" Erase them, wash them off, obscure them. It doesn't matter. Just make them gone. Can do, Lana said, putting her hand to her chest wound and wetting her palm with blood. She went to the wall and wiped the blood over the hieroglyphs, obscuring them completely. The release was immediate. The invisible ropes, gags, and blindfolds all lost their grip on Kaz's and Dale's imagination. The two men blinked as though waking from a dream and looked around at Harry and Lana, their faces screwing up in confusion. Hey, y'all, Dale said. When did you get here? When you two queens failed to show, Harry said. We came looking. Good thing, too, Lana said. A few more minutes, and I think you would have been that old demon bitch's dinner. Jesus, Kaz said. Really? The last thing I remember is getting to the edge of the village and then this. I'd be willing to wager that old bitch knew some even older magic, Harry said. I don't know how she would have made it past her tattoos. Harold, why aren't you looking at me? It is rather odd, Dale chimed in. And where's Norma? Harry pursed his lips and gave a single slight shake of his head by way of reply. Dale grabbed Kaz's hand and squeezed hard. Kaz squared his jaw and took in a deep breath. No words were needed. The message had been received. Right, Kaz said. I'll have my own private apocalypse later. Right now, what's the plan? The plan, Lana said, poking her head out of the tent, is to find that wormhole the old bitch was... But the old demon woman was gone. No trace of her to be found. Fuck, should have just killed her. Nah, Harry said. It's better that she's somewhere rotting for the rest of eternity. The harrowers headed back the way they came while Lana told them what Pinhead had done to Harry and Norma. I can't believe it, Kaz said. Neither can I, said Harry. But we can't focus on that right now, or we'll never do what it is we have to do. Which is? Kaz asked. Find a way out of this place, Harry said. That old demon woman said there was a way out. She also said she'd help us, Kaz said. Maybe she meant to turn us into helpings, Dale said. Old cow didn't exactly have a grasp of the language. No sooner had the words escaped his lips than a bright light illuminated their entire field of vision. The ground shook and the stones beneath their feet rattled. The fuck was that? Harry asked. I don't know, Kaz said, but it was bright as shit. The harrowers headed off between the trees, swallowed up by darkness in a few strides. That's gotta be Lucifer again, right? Harry asked. They came to a clearing and the source of the light suddenly became all too evident. Oh, Jesus God, Dale said. Lucifer isn't in the cathedral anymore, Lana said. He's glowing. Glowing? And he's floating over the lake, Dale said, kicking up the water something fierce. I think I knew that, Harry said. My ears seem to be making up for my eyes. I can hear the water going crazy. Crazy is right. He's... Wow. Cass stopped. What? Said Harry. He's flying up now, fast. So, he's flying up now, fast, said Lana. And the fucking sea beast. The Quoto? Harry said. That's the one, Lana replied. It's coming up after him. God damn, it's big. It's riding a reverse whirlpool or something. Fucking A. The words to describe the sight seemed to fail them all. It was too immense a spectacle. The circling waters in a foaming frenzy, the massive serpentine form of the Quoto rising out of the vortex, empowered by its spiraling energies, and the light from Lucifer's body growing brighter as he climbed the air, with the Quoto following close behind him. The creature was defying the limits of its anatomy with its flight, but Lucifer had it hooked by some invisible barb and drew it up from above, just as the water had cast it skyward from below. Harry stared sightlessly at the spectacle, doing his best to make sense of all the commotion. Guys, what the fuck? I never thought I'd say this, but my words are failing me, Dale said. How about trying? Anyone? I want to see. The Quoto's the size of 10 trains, I swear, Lana said. And it's following him, Kaz followed. Going? Out of the lake and up. Why? Before anyone could venture a guess, Lucifer answered the question for them. Lucifer, the fallen one, the star of morning, had lived and died in his underworld beneath a hated sky. Nas Tuzel, thank you for the follow, appreciate ya. God had set it in the heavens above Lucifer's prison kingdom as a stone might be rolled in front of a tomb to seal in the dead's corruption, so that it could never befoul the world. Now, finally, rather than take his battle inward, Lucifer reacted outwardly for the first time in millennia and struck out at the stone ceiling, his strength fueled purely by rage. The Kuoto was still rising up out of the vortex, its body far vaster than even the Lord of Hell had anticipated. Yet he drew it up without effort. Though it roared its displeasure at being ejected from its natural habitat, its breath stinking of the dead meat in its entrails, it wanted Lucifer in its belly more than anything its hungry eyes had ever settled on, and for that reason alone it didn't fight to free itself from the hold that had been placed on it. Soon it would catch up with the morning star and swallow him whole. He was so close, just a tiny distance beyond its gaping maw. Any moment it would have him. But no, Lucifer kept rising, and the Kuoto came after him, coil upon coil rising skyward. From the vortex now 1,000 feet below. On the beach, the harrowers who still retained their sight watched the spectacle in silence. At that moment, all the commotion, those layers of sound that had steadily escalated as Lucifer prepared to start the water spinning, now ceased. Even the roar of the vortex became remote. The hush lasted 2, 3, 4 heartbeats. Then Lucifer drove the Kuoto into the sky's limit, and the beast crashed into the surface. Upon its impact, there became a single thunderous boom, which started some distance away and then reverberated across the heavens. The Kuoto loosed an unholy, chthonic cry of pain, its last living act, and died, plummeting from the sky toward its watery grave. "What the fuck was that?" Harry screamed, his hands going to his ears. "Jesus, it hit the sky," said Lana. "The stone?" "Hard," said Kaz, "and there's a crack opening up. More than one, actually. A lot more. Fuck. There's cracks spreading over the whole damn rock. And where's Lucifer?" "He's right up against the stone, forcing the cracks open with his light. And the Kuoto?" "Dead. Falling. I've never seen anything like it." "I got the picture," Harry said. "He's going to crack the sky open," Lana said. "Are we going?" Dale wanted to know. "Or are we waiting for the musical number?" "We're going," Kaz said. "Right, Harry?" "I've seen all I wanted to see," Harry replied, unsmiling. "So let's get gone," Lana said. Lead me to Norma," Kaz said, "and we're as good as ghosts." There was a fresh fusillade of noise from overhead as new cracks opened in the stone, spreading from the fissures that were already gaping in the surface. A litter of fragments dropped from the cracks, seeming inconsequential for the first few seconds of their descent, but rapidly revealing their true immensity. It wasn't only their size that was deceptive, so too was their course. The relation between the fracturing stone above and the lay of the land below was misleading. Shards of stone that seemed certain to fall on the beach near, if not directly upon, them fell many miles back, somewhere in the vicinity of Peratha, or thereabouts, while pieces that seemed destined to land a long way off came down in the water close to the shore. The largest of these slivers, a piece of rock the size of a dozen houses or more, hit the water 100 yards out from the shore, the impact sufficient to throw up a plume of water that challenged the cathedral for height. The drizzle of falling shards was rapidly becoming a deluge, as Lucifer's inquiring light pressed deeper into the fractured surface of the sky, breaking off more and more fragments of heaven. One slab, easily as big as a car, headed straight for the beach where Harry and company were currently standing. "You've got to be shitting me," said Kaz. "What?" "No time for questions," Lana barked as she shoved Harry out of the way. The slab sailed past Damore's head, missing his scalp by a whisper, and disappeared without a sound, into a line of trees behind them. Everyone stopped dead in their tracks. "Whoa," said Harry. "That felt big. Where the hell was the crash?" The car's sized slab of sky had sufficient size that its landing would have been enough to make every tree sway from its roots up to its topmost branch, shaking down leaves as it did so. Instead, the slab sailed over the heads of the harrowers and was swallowed whole as though it had never even existed. "Did y'all see what I just saw?" Dale said, his jaw slack. "No," said Harry, "and I'm starting to think you guys are doing this on purpose." "Holy shit," Lana said. "Harry, I think we found our way out." "Holes of worms leading the way home. Fucking A," Kaz said. "Wormholes, Harold. You were right. That's what the old bitch was talking about. We have our way out of this. Come on. Lana led the way to Norma's body. Upon seeing his friend's crushed and lifeless body, Cass faltered for a moment but stayed the course. Jesus Christ, he said. I wasn't ready for that. This was never in my dreams, Dale said, his voice shaky. After a moment of recalibration, he bent over, picked up his old friend, and draped her corpse over his left shoulder. Let's do it, Cass said. We said we wouldn't leave without her. Together they marched out across the inland edge of the trees and into a landscape of piled obsidian boulders. Here the deteriorating heavens shattered with loud cracks as they struck the obsidian. The shrapnel that sped off in all directions from these bits was potentially lethal, ricocheting off the black boulders like bullets. Heads down, the harrowers wove among the boulders to find their wormhole. Jesus, Harry said. How much longer is this going to keep up? From the looks of it, I think he aims to flatten all of hell, Cass said. That does appear to be the plan, Dale agreed. On the heel of Dale's reply came 3 monstrous thunderclaps, louder by magnitudes than anything that had preceded them. They echoed back and forth between earth and sky, their volume not diminishing with each echo, but instead becoming still louder. Echoes of echoes of echoes, soon so numerous they birthed an almost single solid sound. Run, Lana said. Oh shit, here comes Judgment Day, Kaz yelled. Despite the danger from the flying fragments, Kaz stood up and threw back his head so as to at least see the immense spectacle clearly for a few seconds. Super Saiyan Blue, what's up? Lucifer's assaults had finally raised the stone, breaking it into pieces that were still monumental in their fractured state. To Kaz's eyes, the cataclysm seemed to be happening in slow motion, the vast pieces sliding apart with a lazy elegance. I think I see it, Lana said. Tell me we're close, Harry yelled. Hey, Super. Give me the challenge and I'll think about it. Tell me we're close, Harry yelled. If I'm right, yeah, Lana yelled. There's a spot ahead, between 2 boulders where the rocks aren't ricocheting. That's gotta be it, right? Kaz pulled his reluctant eyes off the sky and glanced in Harry's direction. He and Lana were on their haunches 6 or 7 strides away, reaching out to investigate the empty airspace between the boulders where the rocks were disappearing in front of them. Works for me, Harry said. In case it's not what we think it is, if you hear me scream, then what? Stay here? Lana said. Just fucking move it, Galahad. There's no plan B. Before Kaz could watch his friends enter the wormhole, there was another thunderous clap. We'll save that for another stream. I do a foreign language stream, Super Saiyan. We could try that there. And I will be looking up the words before I repeat them back, so if you're trying to be a troll, it's not going to work. Just FYI. Let's see. Harry did... Okay, Cass turned his head. Watch his friend. Okay. Cass turned his head to see the source of the sound, and in that moment finally understood a piece of what drove Harry to do the things he did. Appreciate the follow. Cass turned his head to see the source of the sound, and in that moment finally understood a piece of what drove Harry to do the things he did. Cass found himself suddenly hungry for another glimpse of the dying sky. The pieces were falling faster now, preceded by a hail of stones monsoonal in its ferocity. It was all Kaz could do not to stand still and watch the spectacle unfold before his wondering eyes. Kaz! Kaz! Dale was right beside him, pulling on Kaz's arm. We gotta go now, hun, he said. Or not at all. As Dale pulled Kaz toward the wormhole, a massive block of shed stone struck one of the obsidian boulders nearby. It shattered, throwing immense pieces in all directions. Kaz turned and saw that Harry and Lana were already gone, disappeared into the wormhole when he wasn't looking. He hoped that wasn't the last time he'd see his friends. Then, from the corner of his eye, Kaz saw one of the shards coming at them and started to shout out a warning, but before he could speak, Dale pulled him into the cleft between the 2 boulders. Abruptly, the dark, roaring landscape and its splintered falling sky were gone, and he and Dale were in another place entirely, where only smears of light, speeding across their path or over the uneven ground they stood on, offered any clue to their location. So, this is the wormhole? Kaz said. I reckon, Dale said. Never been in one till now. It's hard to make sense of what's here, Kaz said. Harry? Lana? There was no reply. Where the hell did they go? Do you see them? Honey, I don't see shit. I just hope this doesn't dump us somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. No, said Kaz. We're going to step out into Times Square and it's all been a dream. His remark was punctuated by one almighty, albeit muted, crash from the other side of the threshold, as the remains of the stone dropped out of the sky over hell, crushing the infernal landscape beneath its bulk. The reverberations leaped at the threshold and dispersed their energies through the broken ground, sparking lights that cavorted in the walls that rose to such heights they seemed to converge. Seemingly very far away from hell's landscape now, Kaz and Dale traveled onward as the noise of the infernal cataclysmic scene and its attendant vibrations dropped off into silence and stillness. Bon voyage to perdition, Dale said, until we meet again. The wormhole didn't deliver them into the icy waters of the Atlantic, but neither did it set them down on a quiet New York sidewalk where they could have readily found a way to transport Norma's corpse back to her apartment. No, the wormhole was exquisitely arbitrary. It first offered Lana, Harry, matching her step for step behind her, a tantalizing glimpse of a city street. Not New York, perhaps, but civilization nevertheless. It did not, however, let them exit there. She had barely reported the street to Harry when a shoal of lights blazed by, erasing the reassuring sight. I guess that wasn't our stop, Lana said, trying to keep her tone from sounding hopeless. Whatever desperation she presently felt, it was nothing, she was sure, compared with the thoughts circling in the darkness of Harry's head. Where are Kaz and Dale? Harry asked. Any sign of them? No, but I'm sure they're not far behind us, she lied. Don't worry, we've got another stop coming up. She wasn't lying that time. Even as she spoke, a new door was presenting itself. It was a far less reassuring scene than the city street that had preceded it. A landscape of black rock and unsullied snow, its drifts being stirred into blinding white veils by a relentless wind. If this is our stop, we're fucked, she said. Nico Vasquez, thanks for the follow. Appreciate ya. It wasn't. Once again, she had barely glimpsed the scene when it was erased by the same shoal of lights. A little time passed while they walked on down the wormhole in silence. Lana was in the lead, with Harry's right hand lightly laid on her left shoulder, just to keep Harry from falling as he walked on the uneven ground. A third doorway came into view, and the landscape at least looked warmer than the one preceding it. An American highway, to judge by the signs, running through a desert landscape. The image solidified, signifying to Lana that this was it. The ground of the wormhole then threw a length of its light-streaked darkness out into the yellow-orange dust at the side of the highway. Not quite a red carpet, Lana said, but it does the job. We should hurry before this fucking thing changes its mind. Lana brought Harry out into the heat of a desert noon, and glancing back at the wormhole, saw Kaz, Norma slung over his shoulder, and Dale, as they too stepped off its light-smeared ground, to find that there was nothing but empty air, shimmering with heat. Then the wormhole vanished. Where were you? Lana shouted to them. I thought you were both dead. I thought you were sure they were behind us, Harry said, a wry smile on his face. Don't break my balls. I had to keep us moving. How long have you been waiting here? What's up, Minix? We haven't, Harry said. You stepped out right after we did, but it could have been hours apart to you. I don't expect a wormhole to adhere to our laws of time and space. Well, it's damn good to see you, everyone again, Kaz said. I can't believe we made it. We didn't all make it, Harry said. I know, Harold, Kaz said, clutching Norma closer to his body. You don't have to remind me. I'm happy we're all at least together. I didn't know where that thing would spit us out, or if it would take us all to the same place. Does anyone know where we are? Out of the fire, said Dale, and into the frying pan. Real Joshy, what's up? To find out. I'll drink to that, Lana said, as he peered down the length of the highway, which ran without so much as a 1-degree accommodation down its entire visible length. Wherever we are, wherever we go from here, nothing will be as bad as what we've just faced. There's a building a few miles away in that direction, Dale said. I don't see it. Me neither, Harry said. Wait for questions till after we're done reading. Me neither. There's that trademark wit, Lana said. Anyway, I see the building too. It's far, but it's there. It might lead us to a city. I guess we go that way then, Kaz said. We could wait for some traffic, Harry offered. Get somebody to pick us up. Please, Dale said. I'd like to meet the driver who'd stop to pick up a dandy, a dyke, and a blind man covered in blood, and a nearly 7-foot-tall queen carrying a dead black woman. Suddenly, I'm glad I'm blind, Harry said. Yes, you are. So we're walking then. Let's. With the plan agreed upon, they started down the straight highway. They walked for a time, and as they walked, a few autos heading in their direction passed them by. Each vehicle slowed down more than a little to take a good look at the spectacle. But after having looked, each driver moved on with haste, kicking up choking clouds of yellowish dust as they sped away. But after the 7th car passed them and sped out of sight, Harry began to hear the sound of gospel music. As it grew in volume, he turned his head toward his friends and said, Please tell me I'm not the only one who hears that. I'm not ready to be called to heaven, not so soon after leaving hell. No, Kaz said. I hear it too. Me three, Dale said. Matter of fact, I think it's coming right for us. At that, a large black sedan with a foot-tall crucifix serving as a hood ornament was barreling down the highway. Christians, Kaz said. No hope there, I'm afraid. Kaz turned his attention back to the road ahead and shifted Norma's weight on his shoulder. Norma's body had seemed so very light when he'd first shouldered it, mere skin and bones. But he was a lot weaker now, and though he moved her body from his left shoulder to his right and back again, and sometimes eased up on his shoulders, he simply carried her draped over his arms. There was no real relief. He had no intention of laying the body down, not without any real notion of their whereabouts. He would never forgive himself if any harm were to come to Norma's remains just because he'd neglected them for a moment. Forgiving himself for allowing her to die could be hard enough, he knew, so he trudged on, focusing his diminishing energies on the piece of ground ahead of him, where he would presently set down his foot, then on to the next piece of terrain, indistinguishable from the previous piece except in one vital regard. It brought him closer to the end of this insane journey to hell and back, closer to his tiny store at 11th and Hudson, and the smell of the inks and the prospect of another breathing canvas standing naked before him, shaking, some of them with happy anticipation of the adventure ahead. Oh, to be there now, to crack a beer. No, fuck the beers. Right now he would kill for a glass of ice-cold milk. Are you folks looking for a ride? The voice smashed into Kaz's thoughts like a brick wall. The harrowers turned to see that the voice had come from the driver of the black stretch limousine. Please, God, yes, Harry said. A young pale-skinned, bespectacled man in a short-sleeved white shirt and a narrow black tie opened the passenger door and got out. The name's Welsford. You folks look like you need some help, and the Reverend Kuchever wants you to accept his invitation and step inside and out of this monstrous heat. And we happily accept, Harry replied, but I should tell you that one of our number is dead. Yes, I tried pointing that out to the Reverend, but... Hallelujah, came a voice from the back of the car. One of our beloved sisters has gone to meet her Maker. This is a happy, happy day. Bring her in and make her comfortable. Manners, Zendasian plays. Exercise manners. Kaz labored to get into the limousine with Norma's body while preserving the dignity of the attempt, but it was hard work single-handed. And very plainly, the Reverend Kuchever, who was sitting in the far corner of the back seat, a very large white man in his late 50s dressed in a very expensive suit, had no intention of offering any physical assistance. Kaz draped Norma's corpse half laid, half sitting opposite the Reverend, and he then guided Harry to the long seat that ran down the length of the limousine. A little more, Harold, Kaz said. Right here. Are you blind, young man? The Reverend asked. Only recently, said Harry. O Lord, the Reverend said. You all are mightily afflicted. You could say that, Kaz said as he got out to allow Lana and Dale into the vehicle. Only then did Kaz himself get in and, positioning his body between Norma and Dale, close the door. We're all aboard. You all look like you've been through it, said the Reverend. Dale groaned. Harry took the conversational reins. Thank you for stopping. If you could just drop us off at some place where we can make arrangements to get back to New York. New York, said the Reverend's assistant. You are a long way from home. Where are we? Said Harry. That is a good question, said the Reverend. Where in the blazes are we, Welsford? It feels as though we've been driving for hours. Arizona, Reverend, Welsford replied. Then, turning to Harry and company, the Reverend is due at a church in Prescott, and he consulted his watch. 1 hour and 20 minutes. Then if it's all right with you all, we'll happily travel with you to Prescott, Harry said, and make our arrangements from there. The assistant glanced nervously at Kuchever, who seemed not to have even heard Harry's proposal. Welsford was staring with intense fascination at the rest of the harrowers. Is it all right with you, Reverend? Welsford asked. What if they come with us to Prescott? Prescott, Kuchever said, lost in his thoughts. Is that a yes or a no? The Reverend didn't reply to the questions. His attention remained riveted at the sight of Kaz and Dale, who were now holding hands. Finally, the Reverend said, with an almost tender intimacy in his voice, And you, brothers, what are your stories? Neither man replied. Harry knew what was coming next, and weary as he was, he found himself looking forward to the rude awakening the dear Reverend was about to receive. He had picked the wrong day to bring these wayward sinners to his Lord. Poor children, the Reverend said, being tricked into believing you are born like that. The hardships you must have endured. But God always has purpose, my sons, however difficult it may be for us to understand it. He does, said Kaz. Of course, child, of course. Whatever sins you've committed, he invites you to lay... That's the Reverend talking. Of course, child, of course. Whatever sins you have committed, he invites you to lay them down and accept his forgiveness and his protection. Oh, glory to God in the highest. I see it so clearly now. This is why you're here. Thank you, Lord. Here we go, Harry said, a smile spreading across his face. The Reverend kept up the hard sell. Thanks be to the Lord for delivering you all into my care, so that I may save your souls. Now it was Kaz who groaned. God never tests us beyond what we can bear, the Reverend continued. I promise you, sure as I sit here before you, if you do not repent, you will never see the light of heaven. But I can save you. There is still time, children. Do you wish to be saved from the flames of hell? There is no hell, Harry said. Not anymore. Oh, but there is, the Reverend replied. I have had many visions of that place. I have witnessed its furnaces. I have counted its chimneys. I have watched damned sodomites like you, he pointed at Kaz, and you now at Dale, driven by demons whose faces were foul beyond words. Scary, Harry said. It is, and I swear by the blood of Christ that the devil is in you. He is in all of you. But in Christ's name I can drive him out. I can... The Reverend was interrupted by the sound of Harry laughing. Jesus Christ. Ever hear the expression, know your audience? Harry said, the air in the limo growing thick. I swear on the soul of that dear woman sitting next to you that we just came from the hell you're describing. We followed a demon there to bring my friend back alive. We saw populations destroyed by a plague fog. We saw armies wiped out by magic workings. We saw the devil himself dead, and then resurrected as he rode a gargantuan sea beast into the sky, where he cracked open the roof of hell and brought the sky down on everyone's heads. We barely escaped with our lives. We're hungry, we're beaten, and we're in mourning. We don't have the patience for a sermon right now, Rev. So either shut the fuck up or get the fuck out because this car is going to New York. The Reverend stammered. Driver! The Reverend violently slapped at the glass partition that separated the driver from the rest of the vehicle. Driver! Everything okay back there? The driver called out. No, Welsford said, his voice shrill. Stop the car! The driver dutifully eased the vehicle over to the side of the empty highway and got out, slamming his door, and then walked the length of the vehicle to open the Reverend's door. The driver bent low and peered into the limo. He found everyone sitting politely in their seats. What's the problem, Reverend? These travelers are beyond hope, destined for hell and content to drag every living soul they encounter with them. Of course they are, said the driver, placating his boss. So what, you want them out? Yes, screamed the Reverend. The driver threw the passengers a sympathetic look. All right, the Reverend says out, you're out. We'll get out in New York, Harry said. Don't get smart with me, guy. This here's the Reverend's ride, and he's going to Prescott. And then on to I forget where the hell comes next, but New York is not on the list, so you need to find yourselves a different ride. Or a different driver, Kaz said behind the driver's back. He had slipped out of the passenger side while the driver made his way to the back of the limo, and he had not emerged from hell without his knife. He waved it at the driver, whose response was quick and unequivocal. Take the car, just don't hurt me, okay? I got 5 kids. No wife, but 5 fucking kids. You want to see? I got pictures. He reached into his jacket. I'm sure you're an excellent breeder, Kaz said, but I don't need pictures of the kids. I just need you to help the Reverend out of the car. Out? Oh, he can stay, but I don't think he wants to ride all the way to New York with a car full of unrepentant sinners. The Reverend didn't need Kaz to repeat himself. He had the answer already in mind. Get me the fuck out of this car, he said. It's not going to New York. It's going to the Lake of Fire, and I don't want to be riding in it when it gets there. He stuck out his overly bejeweled, fat-fingered hand. Help me here, Jimmy, or Julius, or whatever the fuck your name is. Frederick, just get me the fuck out of this car. Please don't take the Savior's name in vain, Reverend, Kaz said. Ah, fuck you, the Reverend said. The Reverend reached up and might have caught hold of the door if Kaz hadn't found his hand first and, supplementing Frederick's strength, hauled all 307 pounds of Reverend Kuchever up out of the considerable depression he'd made in the limo seat. Once they had the worst of the work done, Frederick let go of his half of the burden, and Kaz took the hint and did the same. The Reverend loosed a shrill shout and went down on his hands and knees in the litter of the rock shards at the edge of the highway. Wellsford, you idiot! Where are you? I fell down! Help me up, or I swear to Christ I will fire you and make goddamn sure that no one will hire you if you live to be 150. Wellsford scrambled to help his beloved employer and preened over him like a sycophantic lover. The sight was enough to make Kaz laugh out loud. What's so fucking funny? The Reverend demanded of Kaz as Wellsford fussed over him, brushing dirt from his suit with short little strokes of his hand. It's an inside joke, Kaz said. Oh yeah, and I'll be needing everyone's phones, of course. Once all forms of communication had been confiscated, Kaz climbed into the driver's seat, then rolled down the window and drove off, leaving the sanctimonious Reverend and his staff in the Arizona dust. Kaz, Harry said as the car barreled down the highway. Yes, Harold? God bless you. Chapter 4. All right, let me do some scrolling back here. I'm sure these people are not here now, but let me see what we have as far as questions go. I'm just taking a break from reading to see what's going on here. Eris3YO asks if I'm a Satanist. Well, define what a Satanist is, and I'll tell you, if you're still here. Real Joshy asks, why are you talking out of the left side of your mouth? The answer to that is I have a kind of a jaw, kind of weird jaw thing. It has a name, but I don't remember what the name is. It kind of bends the jaw like weird. I don't know what Zindasian is trying to do, but I'm not even going to answer that. Chapter 4. Let's get back to it. Lucifer lay under a great weight of shattered stone, his body so exquisitely knitted that it had remained whole beneath the fall of hell's heavens. The voices that stirred him from his comatose state were not human. Rather, they spoke in the fluting voices of his own tribe of angels, though their debate, which he understood perfectly well despite the passage of centuries, was scarcely evidence that they were messengers of love. We should have been here to see this, Bathrayat. Somebody should have been keeping an eye on things and raised the alarm the moment the stone became unstable. I would have wanted a seat up front for this. Can you imagine the panic and the screaming and the praying? Demons don't pray, Thaki. Of course they pray. You really are a cretin, aren't you? Who the fuck would they pray to? They had a leader, some rebel. Shite, I don't remember his name. You know me and names. He was a dickhead, and everybody says so. And old bitch tits kicked him down here. He started some rebellion. Lucifer? That's the one, Lucifer. They prayed to Lucifer. Why? Didn't he build this place? So? Who cares? I care. You care? About somebody other than yourself? What kind of shite is that? I'm not saying I care as in tears and lamentation care. I care that the fuckwit who had this come to pass, and it's a big job, I'm saying whoever that selfish fuckwit was, he could have told a few friends and we all could have been sitting on the sidelines watching the slaughter like civilized creatures. Instead, we were standing around doing nothing in a state of ignorance. Shut up, will you? I can do whatever. Shut your mouth, brother, and open your eyes. Do you see what I see? There, under that rock. At that, Lucifer drew a deep breath, and the massive stone that pressed down on his body loosed a single loud crack as it split from end to end. God in heaven, the one called Bethriat said. The two angels looked up at Lucifer. Their natures were not capable of shame. What could perfect beings such as they ever have to be ashamed of? But their instincts, however coarsened by lack of use they were, told them this was no ordinary demon. It's him, Bethriat said. But he looks so... Shut up, brother, Bethriat hissed. Be best if you kept your opinions to yourself. You're not afraid of him, are you? I said, shut the mouth. You know what? Fuck you, Thaki said, and then turning to Lucifer. And especially fuck you, Lucifer Almighty. We were having a fine time till you showed up. Having spoken his mind, the angel started to turn away, but one word uttered by Lucifer, don't, was enough to stop the angel mid-motion. What? Said Thaki. You are numbered among the dead, angel, Lucifer said. I am? Thaki looked puzzled, then smiled in blissful adoration and ceased. The energies from which he had been nurtured, inheriting their willfulness and their lusts and their escalating confusions, immediately began to vacate his body and go in search of new pastures to seed. The light in the warm flesh of his muscles flickered out as all the strength in him perished. He curled in upon himself, his head becoming elongated and shrinking as he collapsed like a building set with charges. If there was any pain in his demise, he let out no complaint. The other angel, whose skin was subtly imprinted with what looked like eyes, delineated in red with black irises, blinked in acceptance. It is boring, day after day, the creature said. I get the feeling that anything is preferable to this. Anything? Yes, the angel said, deliberately providing the executioner with his cue. Dead, Lucifer said. The other angel nodded, and curling in upon himself was unmade twice as quickly. Lucifer climbed up into the tallest pinnacle of sky stone and did his best to assess his whereabouts, but it was by no means easy. The deluge of fractured stone had effectively flattened every last topographical detail that might have helped him to work out where he was and in which direction he had hoped of making an unseen departure. He had no desire to find any others here. He simply wanted anonymity for a while, to sit in a quiet place and try to figure out what to do with the unwanted resurrection that had been gifted to him. But first he needed to get up and out of hell's wasteland without drawing any further attention to himself. The number of angelic presences here was growing. He saw them stepping down out of the darkness all around him, eager to witness the ruins of hell. He took advantage of their morbidity, plotting a path of departure that would keep him away from the grisly sights that drew the angels' clammy attentions, and instead took him away through narrow cracks between the heaped stones. Once he'd put some distance between himself and the worst of it all, it was easy. He found a dead soldier in a robe that was large enough for him to envelop himself. He removed the soldier's clothing and wrapped it around his own body to keep the light in his flesh from attracting the gazes of the curious as he made his way up out of hell and into the world of men. Uh-oh. Something's about to go down. He's coming into our world. Demore sat in darkness. Whatever the time, day or night, darkness. Being blind in hell had seemed scarcely real, but once he got back into New York, back into his apartment, and later his office, he began to comprehend how merciless the hell priest's final curse on him had been. Like everyone blessed with the gift of sight, he had taken it for granted. He had lived with his eyes. They made it possible for him to exist in the eternal present. As long as he could see ahead, he could at least attempt not to look back. Now he had to rely upon memory to find his way around his world, and memory took him out of the present and forced him to constantly cast his mind into the murky waters of the past. He had never been very good at it, but regardless, he wanted the now again. With no reason to think there'd be an end to his curse, Harry decided to close the agency. It wasn't as though Harry needed the money anymore either. As soon as Kaz and Harry were ruled out as suspects in Norma's death, the matters of her estate were settled. For a woman living in such humble circumstances, Norma had been quite well off. Harry was surprised to find that she owned the building in which she had lived, along with half the buildings in the vicinity, several gas stations, a handful of car dealerships, and an island off the coast of California. She'd left everything to Harry. Still, even with this newfound wealth, the decision to close up shop was brutal on Harry, and Kaz was his only lifeline to sanity. When the decision was finally made, they went to Harry's office together and ran through the jobs that had still been outstanding when they'd taken off in pursuit of Norma. There were a couple that Harry felt he'd virtually wrapped up and would be able to finish with Kaz, there to give him some help. But most of the jobs were simply not feasible in his blind state, and he made the calls to all the clients in question, explaining that he had met with an accident and was unable to finish the job he'd accepted. Where there were advance fees, he promised to return them. "It feels like I've died," he said to Kaz when he'd finished. "Well, you didn't. And I should be grateful, right?" "Right. Well, I'm not. I love you, Harold, but I don't have the energy to cheer you up. Why don't we put the pity party on hold while you tell me what you want to do with all this shit?" "This shit is my life, Kaz. Try to show a little compassion." "You're starting to sound like a bigger queen than me. Brooding only looks good in the movies. Trust me, in real life it's fucking annoying. Let's start going through the files to figure out what you want to keep. You need to get out of the office by the end of next week." "I should have kept it." "And done what with it? Open a driving school?" All right, I get it." Harry reached out and grabbed for the bottle of scotch on his desk. "Did you move my scotch?" "Sure did. Why?" "You were slurring at your clients." Harry sat for a moment, digesting Kaz's words, then changed the subject. "How's married life?" "Kinky," Kaz said. "Dale's the best thing that ever happened to me. You should call Lana. You guys have a lot in common. Mostly you're both stubborn assholes." "Yep," said Harry, wishing he had something to swig. The sky stone had broken into 3 massive parts as far as the Hell Priest could discern. It had shed pebbles no larger than a hand and slabs big enough to be minor moons. All of Hell had been virtually flattened by the falling sky, which left the Cenobite guessing his location as he traveled. He sensed now that he had finally discovered the remains of the city, and his instinct was confirmed when he came upon a split in the rock that was barely a crack at one end, and yawned to the distance of perhaps a quarter mile at the other. He walked toward the narrow end of the fissure while peering down into its depths. There wasn't enough light, even for one whose eyes were as sensitive as his, to make out anything below, at least not until several planes of yellow flame burst from the crevice and illuminated the rubble. He saw here the houses of the richest demons, the Crawley Crescent, with its perfect sweep of white marble houses that had once faced out toward an ancient strand of thriosocot trees, to which legend attached the notion that should they ever ail, then the city would also ail, and should they die, so then would the city. Here now was the proof, lying crushed at the bottom of the fissure, and lit by the same fire that had first illuminated the depths. He could see several thriosocot branches, I think I'm saying that right, stripped of foliage and split, the sweet swell of their sap hanging in the air. The Hell Priest was not for the most part superstitious, but there were a few cases that crossed the boundaries of his distrust and had become a profound part of his understanding of the world. The legend of the thriosocot trees had here been proved true. Strange to say, given that he'd witnessed the stone falling and known that nothing beneath it could have survived. He had held on to the remote idea that the stand of thriosocot trees would have escaped by some miracle. But no, the sky had killed everything. And he had played a part in all of this. Were it not for his ambitions, there would have been no need to raise Lucifer against him. And if Lucifer had stayed asleep in death, there would still be a sky in the sky. So this was of his making, this silence, this death. It was what he thought he'd wanted all along. Cass finished packing Harry's things, then left to Tinderdale, waiting for his friend to return. Harry sat the window open a crack and listened to the flux of the traffic as the lights changed at the intersection. The afternoon was slipping away. The passage of blue sky visible between the buildings would be steadily darkening. The traffic would be even heavier now as the flow was swollen by people heading home or out for dinner, their heads still buzzing with what the day had brought. Sure, work could be a pain in the ass, but it was purpose. And what was life, any life, his life, without purpose? Nothing, he muttered to himself, and uncorking the scotch Kaz finally had relinquished upon leaving, put the bottle to his lips. As he did so, a glimmer of light appeared at the corner of his eye. He lowered the bottle, his heart suddenly beating quick time. He'd seen something. His sight wasn't extinguished after all. Very slowly, so as not to upset the healing going on in his head, he turned toward whatever was coming back into view. That's when he saw her. Norma? Hi, Harry. She looked healthy, more like the Norma Payne whom Harry had first met so many years ago. Her body wasn't insubstantial like some cheap Hollywood phantom. She was perfectly solid, but it was she and only she who had come into view, a body framed by darkness. I can see you. Christ, I can see you. I always tried imagining what ghosts looked like to you, but I wasn't even close. Oh, Norma, I can't believe you're here. It's good to see you too, Harry. I've missed you. Can I hug you? I'm afraid not, but we can sit here and talk as long as you want. I don't have a curfew. I can come and go as I please. Come and go from where? That's between me and the architect of my new accommodations. Just know that I'm very comfortable where I am now, and believe me, it was worth waiting for. But I had to come back and see you, Harry. I miss you so much. And I have a few tips I want to pass on. Do's and don'ts, if you will, when dealing with the recently deceased. I thought I'd be dying of natural causes at 101. That's how old my mama was when she died. And my grandmother, too. So I was pretty damn certain I'd do the same, by which time I would have taught you everything I knew about, getting the dead to move on. And you just take over from there. Wait, you can't contain your excitement, right? You get to save people who are kicked into the hereafter a little too suddenly. They're wandering around half crazy, Harry, trying to figure out what in the name of sweet Jesus they're supposed to do now. And good news, you're their only hope. Slow down. You certainly have your choice of offices, she said. A lot of them have a panoramic view of the city. Yeah, where the hell did all that money come from? I got a lot of money given to me over the years, Harry, all from relatives of dead folks I helped. They heard what I'd done for their family members and wanted to say thank you. I gave it all to you. I know, and it was entirely too generous, Norma. Generosity had nothing to do with it. I gave you that money so you could afford to do what you need to do. Don't make me take it back. I can do that, you know. You might have to. I don't think I can do what you're asking of me. You're feeling sorry for yourself again because of a little darkness in your life. I heard you with Kaz. He was right. All that brooding ain't healthy. Don't make me lecture you from beyond the grave. I've done enough of it already. Harry smiled. God, I missed that. But that has nothing to do with being blind, Norma. You made it look easy, but you're so much stronger than me. How does a lost soul help lost souls? Norma smiled and the darkness in the room diminished. Who better, she said. And while you're thinking about it, open up your blinds and look down. When I open that window, I'm going to see what you saw every day of your sightless life, aren't I? Maybe, she said, smiling. Harry turned his chair around and stood up, reaching with uncertain fingers for the cords of the antiquated Venetian blinds, which were knotted and truculent and near impossible to open even when he'd had eyes to help him separate them. Today was no exception. Harry gave up tugging on the cords and reached down to lift the blinds with his hand. When he did so, he looked down at the street as Norma had requested, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. It felt like the bottom dropped out beneath his feet, and he'd fallen 10 stories in the blink of an eye. They're everywhere, he said. Epilogue. We are nearing the end of our story, kids. Epilogue. Lucifer came up into the world with an unerring sense of how the lines of power were laid and which was best to follow if he wanted to get into the heart of the human story, the same way he had so often in the early days. The lines converged in the city of Welcome, Arizona, where he'd lingered for 2 days to sit in on the trial of a man who'd murdered several children in the region and partaken of their flesh. There was nothing new about the spectacle. The parents of the dead children sat in the court, pouring out wordless venom toward the murderer. The madman sought refuge in his madness, and outside the courthouse, demonstrators threw makeshift nooses over the branches of the sycamores that grew amid the square. When Lucifer was certain that there was nothing for him here, he skipped unnoticed through the crowd, pausing to look up at the churning trees, their boughs creaking in the gusting winds that snatched away fall's early deaths. Then he was on his way again, following the flow of energies that seeped up out of the ground. He knew already what city awaited him at the end of his journey. He'd seen its name many times in the newspapers. He plucked out of trash cans or out from under the arm of some human being. New York, it was called, and all that he'd read about it made it seem the greatest city in the known world, somewhere he could linger a while and taste the times. For long distances he walked, because the line did not lie beside a highway. But when it did, he never waited long for a ride. A woman driving alone picked him up when he was still 300 miles from his destination. She said her name was Alice Marrow. They talked a little, of nothing significant, then lapsed into silence. 10 minutes passed. Then Alice said, I had a nightlight when I was little, which I kept beside my bed to make sure the boogeyman didn't get me. Your eyes have the same light in them, I swear. They stopped at a motel for one night, Alice paying for his room and for food. He ate pizza. Thereafter, it would be all he ever ate. In the night, he lay naked on his bed and waited for her. She did not come immediately, but after 2 hours she knocked at his door and said something about wanting to see his eyes in the dark. Alice and he had sexual congress 6 times before dawn, and by the 5th she was in love with him. In the middle of the next day she asked him if he had a place to stay in New York, and when he told her no, she seemed happy, as if this confirmed the rightness of what she felt. They arrived in New York at 1 a.m, the city an astonishment to Lucifer. Alice checked him into a hotel, promising that tomorrow she would take him out and buy him some good clothes. The long drive had exhausted her, but sleep would not come. She went to his room, where he was waiting, twin night lights flickering in his head. "Who are you?" she asked him. "Nobody yet," he whispered. The Cenobite was climbing the steps to the fortress, which were littered with pieces of stone but still climbable, when a shockwave passed through the air and ground. He turned to see bright bursts of gold and scarlet flames spouting from fissures in the stone that had demolished the city. The force of the eruption sufficient to make the fissures gape, which unleashed still greater torrents of fire. He watched for a little time and returned to his climb, his long, thin shadow thrown by fires, preceding him to the top step. He was 2 steps shy of reaching the top himself when a second shockwave, much more violent than the first, erupted. The tremors didn't die away this time. They steadily became more powerful. Very cautiously, the Cenobite took a backward step while keeping his eyes on the flame. The vista of stone, smoke, and tremors were changing in nature, the shocks giving way to tidal motions that had the scale of a tsunami surf. Another shockwave threw him off his feet, and he fell. The cracked slab of the threshold dropped away beneath him into the throe of the wave, making his fall all the longer. When he landed, the bones of his face cracked in a dozen places, and the sudden rush of pain, which had been such a reliable source of pleasure in years long lost, was now only agony. His system rebelled. His body was marked by its own tsunamis, driving deep into the cankerous pit of his stomach, and deeper still into its gut, where rot turned to shards of stone. It was as if his body was attempting to turn itself inside out. He loosed a sound that was part belch, part sob, and then vomited, a rush of blood that was nearly black and as thick as phlegm. Through the noise of its splattering, he heard a far deeper sound, and some fraction of him that was able, even in the midst of its violent decay, to assess circumstances with detached thought. That's the end beginning. The violence of his vomiting left him powerless to control his body, his battered face so distrusted by his scream that his lips tore like wet paper. There was nothing left in him now except his last poor hope of willing his eyes to open, so he might look and see whatever final vision hell had for him. He drew every last mote of will from the furrows of his collapsing body and gathered them, turning them to a single purpose. "I will open my eyes," he ordered himself. Reluctantly, his body obeyed him. He unstuck his lids, sealed with the gray glue of his dissolving flesh, and focused his eyes on whatever was in front of them. He had the whole panorama in view, the flames emptying to a higher point than ever, as the motion in the ground put new stresses on the stone. He had been watching for just a few seconds when the tidal shifts in the ground abruptly ceased, the thundering that accompanied them ceasing at the same instant. The Hell Priest's pulse quickened in anticipation of whatever lay on the far side of this silence, and it came soon enough. A simple sound, as of some immense blow struck in the tormented ground. It caused the pieces of the stone that had crushed the city to be lifted off their bed of rubble, their vast weight effortlessly thrown up by the power unleashed in that single blow. At the top of their ascent, they seemed to pause for a beat. Then they dropped, their magnitude so great that the ground upon which the city had been raised simply cracked as the stones bearing the city's remains started their descent. The fires found the mother lode of whatever fuel had fed them, and the geysers of flame leaped so high, they would have licked the sky if it had still been there. The burst of light illuminated the cataclysm below with brutal clarity, but there was nothing down there left to witness. Just the stones falling away with the abyss. "Nakab, Dari, what's up?" The Cenobite looked at the fire instead, and in that instant the fire looked back at him. He was watching, he knew, the unmaking of hell. The place was being wiped away by some great invisible hand. Perhaps it would be rebuilt. Perhaps a new system would be put in place. It was not for him to know. The thoughts contented him. He had challenged a higher power, and he had lost. It was the natural order of things. In that challenge, he had wreaked havoc, and now he was dying, along with everyone else in this contemptible place. Content in the knowledge that his legacy would forever be one of agony and loss, he opened himself to oblivion. His eyelids closed, buckled, really, the bones in his face so fragile they shattered under the weight of his very lids as he dropped to the threshold of existence. His last breath had already left him, and as he fell, life did the same. Besides Norma's impressive television collection, the only other physical items Harry had inherited from Norma's apartment were the many talismans and charms that she accrued doing during her years as New York's Queen of the Dead. Almost all of them sent to her by the relatives of spectral clients, thanking her for the help that she had given to a spouse or a sibling, or most distressing of all, a child. As it had been Harry who had read the letters these items came with to Norma, he was profoundly respectful of how much love and gratitude had been poured into the gifts. Each item had been charged with all the power of those feelings, making up a vast collection of potent protectors. Not a single one was discarded. With so much to be moved from Harry's apartment and office, Kaz knew the task would take several weeks if it was to be left to Dale and himself. He talked it over with Harry and asked if he could bring some extra muscle to get the job done quickly so that Kaz could open up his shop again and start earning some money. Harry had no problem with this. He only asked that Kaz be the one to box up and carry the contents of the two deep-bottom drawers to the right and left of his chair. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it, man. What have you got in there that's so special? Just a few keepsakes. Souvenirs from various scrapes I got into. I don't want anybody but you to deal with all that stuff in those drawers, okay? Do you know who will be helping with the move yet? Yeah, some friends of mine. They can be trusted. Are they ex-fuck buddies, Harold? I'm a new man, remember? That's right. I keep forgetting that Dale has made an honest man of you. It doesn't hurt that he's hung like a giraffe. I was a detective for a long time, Kaz. I already assumed as much. Kaz's friends Armando and Ryan arrived the next day. Lana was there too, invited by Kaz unbeknownst to Harry, who forcibly made nothing of it and put them all to work in the storeroom, with the duty of packing up in boxes everything on the cluttered shelves and in the cabinets. The room was L-shaped, with the portion that wasn't visible from the office abandoned to chaos by Harry several years before. Most of it, Harry had admitted to Kaz, was boxes of old office supplies, which he'd intended for his secretary back in the day when he still believed his life was going to be a painless, lucrative round of divorce cases and insurance investigations. Okay. Lana, Armando, and Ryan were working up a sweat in the L-shaped room. The door between the two rooms opened a crack, but there was very little conversation. They shifted many boxes that were indeed packed with office supplies that told their own melancholy story. Only one item was slipped through to Kaz. Take a look at this. There's a whole box of them, Lana said, passing Kaz a Christmas card. If there was any sadder proof of Harry's high hopes for his business, it was this slickly painted card with an innocuous painting of pine trees and snow by moonlight with a printed message inside wishing the recipient the best Christmas till next Christmas. Season's greetings from the Delmore Detective Agency. Kaz laughed. I'd bet he never sent a single one of these out. What's the joke? Kaz turned. Harry was pushing the door open wider. Just talking about Christmas, Kaz replied a little lamely. He put the card down on Harry's desk. It wasn't important. Everybody okay? We're sweaty and dusty and ready for something to eat, said Lana, but we're getting through it. Shall I order Chinese? Or there's a good Thai place a few blocks over that delivers. Or pizza? I vote Thai, Armando yelled through from the storage room. Thai's fine with me, Lana said. Will you get some Thai beer? I've worked up a powerful thirst. Not a problem, Harry said. Is the phone still in the same place? You want me to do it? Kaz asked. No, Kaz, I'm blind, not crippled. Harry made a confident move toward the desk, avoiding with uncanny ease the heaped-up files that littered his path. He got to his chair and sank down in it. I don't mind the occasional interruption. From the United States. That's where I'm from. You know, this is a damn comfortable chair. Will you put it up by the window for me, Kaz? You mean in the big room? Oh, you mean in the big room in place of Norma's chair? Yeah, done. Harry slid the chair toward his desk and picked up the phone, dialing the number from memory. I'm just going to order a bunch of things they do really well. Is that okay? Ryan doesn't like stuff too spicy, Armando said. Right, Ryan? There was a grunt from Ryan. Are you okay back there? Yeah, just concentrating. On what? Nothing, just making sure it isn't too spicy. Already noted, Harry said. Damn, he put the phone down. Dialed the wrong number. He pulled the phone over so it was right in front of him and ran his fingers over the buttons. Why the hell did I do that? My head feels... He stopped. You need me to check the number? Kaz said. Listen, Harry murmured. You hear that? What? That tinkling music. Harry stood up, dropping the receiver on the desk beside the phone. You don't hear it, Kaz? Lana? He was moving around the other side of the desk toward the stockroom door, kicking over several piles of paperwork in his haste. Lana opened the door as wide as she could, squashing the garbage behind it against the wall. Be careful, she said to Harry. The floor's covered. Too late, Harry's foot caught on one of the boxes and he stumbled forward, dropping onto his hands and knees in the litter of envelopes and rubber bands that had spilled from the box he'd kicked. Oh God, Harry, Lana said. Are you okay? I'm fine. He reached out to his right, memory guiding his fingers to the handle of the top drawer of the much dented filing cabinet. The drawer was unlocked, however, and empty. It slid out, and Harry would have hit the floor a second time if Lana hadn't thrown her weight against the drawer and slammed it closed. There was still a moment while Harry regained his equilibrium. The music continued its tintinnabulation, the sticky, sweet little cycle of melody quickening like a madhouse waltz. Where's Ryan? Harry said. He's back there, Armando told him. Armando was talking from the corner of the room, Harry guessed, a vantage point from which he could have both Harry and Ryan in view. The far end of the room was the most chaotic. 4 black plastic garbage bags, discarded notes without files, and files without notes, discarded cameras that had been thrown in a box along with hundreds of rolls of exposed but undeveloped film, and buried behind all this chaos, a few items that Harry... Oh my God, somebody did it. And buried behind the chaos, a few items that Harry had felt obliged to hang on to but hadn't wanted to think about every day because they had unpleasant associations. Toxic souvenirs of his journey to the end of the world and his wits. He quietly cursed himself for failing to remember the danger that was buried amidst the trash there. A scalpel he'd confiscated from a demon who'd caused mischief by passing itself off as a cut-rate plastic surgeon. Some keepsakes from a demon casino he had closed. He had held on to all of these, but... No, Harry said, that's not possible. I left it in Louisiana. Harry had cautiously found his way around the corner now. It was unmistakable. It was the chime of the box. Le Marchand's infernal masterpiece. The music it was producing was to enrapture the man who was in the midst of opening it. Ryan, Harry said, what have you got? Ryan grunted by way of reply. He was obviously in the throes of the box's hypnotic working. Harold, what is it? Kaz shouted. You're freaking me out, man. Ryan, I know what you found is fun to play with, but you need to put it down. Ryan actually spoke up now in defense of his ownership. I found it in the trash. I know, Harry said as calm as he could, but it needs to go back there. You heard, Harry? Kaz said. He'd come to the spot just behind Harry's left shoulder, where he'd reliably been throughout the march through hell. Harry doesn't fuck around, Kaz went on. Just hand over the fucking box. I don't know what you're fucking with, but neither do you. The hieroglyphics are beautiful. It's Teufelsbruch. I think I'm saying that right, Harry said. It's German. The guy who decided it all was a man in Hamburg. He's dead now, but he named the code before he died. Teufelsbruch. I said, fuck, that's devil speak. Yeah, and I've had my fill. And what does it say? Ryan asked. Give me the box back and I'll tell you. No, Ryan said. Ryan, listen to yourself, Kaz said. He squeezed Harry's shoulder for a moment as he spoke, signaling that he was about to make a move. All I hear is the pretty music. Bullshit, Kaz moved suddenly and Harry heard a scuffle, then a pained shot from Ryan and the source of the lunatic melody dropped to the floor and rolled away from the struggle, ending up close to Harry's feet. Harry dropped down onto his haunches, his clammy palmed hands locating the box instantly. As he picked it up, Ryan yelled, That's mine, you fuck! Get back, Harry! Harry turned, but Ryan reached out and grabbed his arms, his fingernails digging deep enough through shirt and skin to make Harry bleed. Harry pulled away, Ryan's nails gouging him in the process, and stumbled in what he hoped was the right direction. Lana caught him and took his arm. Where's Armando? Harry said. He ran, Lana said, as soon as you said devil speak. Where are we going? Into the office. It was only 4 steps to the door, 5, and they were through it. Behind them, Ryan was still cursing Harry, but he put it out of his head and concentrated on the matter in hand. The puzzle apparently no longer needed any human agency in its solving. It was doing that for itself, opening in Harry's hands as he walked with it, its tunes scratching at the back of his skull to get in there and cause some trouble the way it had with Ryan. The little door of curved bone near the back of the device was open just a crack, and Harry felt the familiar stream of Teufelsprach that had made Ryan crazy wind its way into his head. At its root were the remnants of angelic speech, which had risen into music when their passions were fired. But the words had been poisoned, the music corrupted. After his trip into the infernal, Harry knew now what was coursing into his head was sewer filth, stinking with plague and despair. He wanted it out. Desk, he said to Lana. One sweep. Just clear it all off, quickly. Lana caught the urgency in Harry's voice, and she did as he'd said, sweeping whatever papers and photographs Kaz had been organizing back into the chaos underfoot. From every corner of the room and from the boards beneath the threadbare carpet came a ragged litany of growls and creaks as the fabric of old building was tested by the mechanisms that the solving of the puzzle had activated. Somewhere in the no-names land between crawl space and dream space, where the brute simplicity of brick and timber lost faith in itself, something slid over the threshold. Harry carefully set the box down on his old desk. He'd spent much of his adult life behind it. Too much time wasted puzzling over the twin mysteries of cruelty and grace. Now all that was old news. The only puzzle left that mattered had finished solving itself, right there on his desk. The music had slowed again, the pitch dropping to a guttural mutter. What happened next was candy for the sighted. It drew an admiring, "Fuck! Look at that!" from Lana. What? Light! Coming out of the top of the puzzle, going straight up and bright. Wait, it's dropping. Keep clear of it. It's nowhere near either of us. It's sliding down onto the wall where your big map of New York is pinned up. Now it's stopped. Describe it. It's just a long, narrow line of light, one end at the bottom of the wall, the other 6 feet up. A bit higher, maybe. What is this? A door to hell. Open just a crack. Another one. Another one? Lana said. Kaz! I'm right here, Kaz said. He was at the door between the rooms. Have you got Ryan? More or less. He's subdued. Get him out of here. Get everybody out. No, fuck this. We did our time. They can't do this to us again. I don't think it works like that. Tell me, what's going on through there? The light's dying away, Lana said. It got really bright for a few seconds, and now it's just fading. Maybe you stopped it before it got going? No. The solid structure of the room didn't greet the door's defiant appearance in its midst without complaint. Bricks, forced askew to accommodate the trespassing door, had cracked from top to bottom and now ground their broken halves together. Black lightning fractures crossed the ceiling and zigzagged down the walls, flakes of paint shed from overhead, flickering as they fell. A gust of wind, befouled by the stench of rot, blew in from hell and caught the door as it came, throwing it open. The room complained vehemently, having to suddenly make room for the entire door, the walls shaking in their fury, particularly the map wall where the cracks were an inch wide around the door frame. Timbers creaked and splintered as the comforting geometry of the real was recalculated by the supernatural. Brick dust ground into a fine red haze filled up the room, the gusts from the other side making it curl and eddy. What can you see through the door? Not much, Kaz said. If I go to the threshold, will I get sucked back in? That's not how it worked for me, Harry said. Shouldn't there be a bell? I remember you telling me there was a bell tolling. Yeah, said Harry, like a funeral bell. He lifted his head back, listening closely for the sound. It wasn't there. No bells in hell? He said. No, nothing in hell, Kaz said, peering into the portal. Harold, if that box is supposed to open a doorway to hell, either hell ain't there anymore or the box dialed the wrong number. I'm coming to you, Harry said. He stood up and Lana took hold of his arm again. She helped him around the side of his desk, moving cautiously over the littered floor. When they got to the corner of the desk, Harry paused for a moment, then turned and reached back to pick up the puzzle box. He didn't handle it with reverence now, which fact it recognized by letting out a shrill shriek, the sound so suddenly Harry almost dropped the thing. And it modulated immediately, the shrieking becoming the sobbing of an infant. Kaz? I'm right here. 3 steps, Harry, Lana said. Yeah, that's it. 2, 1. Okay. There's a stone step a couple of inches ahead of you. That's the threshold. Harry tapped the step with the toe of his boot. Then he set the configuration down onto the step. The box rolled over a couple of times and then stopped, its anguished mewling dying away. He didn't need a sight to evoke the wasteland that lay beyond the threshold. Harry faced the blustering wind. Lucifer's country smelled of death and disease. There were no appeals, no judgments, no prayers or shrieks, just the occasional buzz of a fly looking for somewhere to lay its eggs, and the remote rumble of thunder from storm clouds pregnant with the poison rain. Smells like hell, Harry said. I guess it's gone. Thank God. Any idea what to do about this fucking door? Kaz said. Just one. You used to be a football player, right? I never told you that. How'd you kick the box? What? The box, Kaz. Kick it as far as you can. Harry felt Kaz's grin of pleasure. Give me some room, Harry, and Lana backed up a couple of steps. He couldn't see Kaz's kick, of course, but Harry felt and heard it. The rush of air as Kaz ran past him, the sound of his boot connecting with the puzzle box, and a barely contained yelp from Kaz, who growled to Harry. Fuck! That thing did not want to be kicked. The tremors started again in mid-sentence, the room shaking, drizzles of paint flakes and brick dust beginning afresh. Harry stood at the threshold, Kaz on one side, Lana gripping his arm firmly on the other, as he listened to the door close once and for all. Harry tentatively threaded between the towers of televisions, which he had turned off 2 hours ago, as it began to get dark, and found his way to the chair in front of the window that faced the river, setting a bottle of single malt on the floor beside him. Harry had been given, at his request, a meticulous description of the view spread before him by Kaz, but before he could bring it into his mind's eye, something bright moved left to right across what would once have been his field of vision. It had barely passed from view when a second blur of light came after it. This time Harry followed it with his spirit sight to the corner of the room, and then lost it as it turned the corner, leaving for his study, beads of luminosity shedding as it traveled out of sight. But even as they fell from sight, a massive shoal of bright forms burst into view, drawing his gaze back over to the left. The forms wove between one another as they came, and stopped in front of Harry's chair so that they could scrutinize him with their glistening eyes and allow him to have sight of them. They were the dead, of course, some still wearing their fatalities, like ragged insignia on their bright anatomies, others, their killing traumas perhaps internal, unmarked, but all dead, all ghosts, and all lost. He assumed, or else why had their wanderings brought them to him? Norma had given him 2 5-hour-long lessons on how to deal with his deceased visitors when they came. And they will come, she said. You can be certain of that, because I'll go among the lost dead and tell them where to find help. She'd done her work well. Now the rest was up to him. He took a swig of scotch, and very slowly, so as not to cause any panic among the ghosts, he got up out of his chair. It was 6 steps to the window. He took 5, still moving cautiously, and saw the throng of wayward spirits below. He was suddenly seized with the overwhelming knowledge that life was good. If he ever needed a reminder, all he had to do was gaze down at the hopeless deceased spirits seeking answers below. So what if he couldn't see? The sighted memories he had weren't all that pleasant to begin with. It seemed that the time-tested metaphor of passing through the fire held true. Harry was on the other side of it, burned but cleansed. Maybe tonight he'd even call Lana and ask her out on the date, that date that everyone had been trying to talk him into setting. Or maybe he'd do it tomorrow. Hell was easy. Romance was hard. Harry took a deep breath and again turned his mind to the task at hand. He then reached out with his right hand, laying it on the cold glass of the large window. My name's Harry, he said, hoping his words would be audible to them. I'm here to help, if you have questions, and to direct you if you're lost. I can't guarantee that I'll have all or any of the answers, though. I'm new at this job, but I will do my my best. I'll do my best to get your problems solved so you can go on your way. Please, come closer. Yeah, romance is an enigma sometimes, Nakab. The invitation was barely out of his mouth when the entire shoal came at him, the suddenness of their approach sending Harry stumbling back toward his chair. They flew through the room, their presence instantly chilling the air by several degrees. Then they circled him, picking up speed with each circuit, dividing around Harry as they swept by him. Norma had warned him he might find the first couple of nights a little raucous until word got around that he was the real thing, but she hadn't advised him on how to deal with such situations. We are almost to the end of the story. No matter, Harry had corralled enough demons in his time to know how to handle an energetic spirit. "All right," he yelled. "You've seen the room. Now all of you get the hell out of here." "I mean it. I want this room completely cleared. Do you hear me?" "I said completely cleared." The shoal divided now, as those who were instantly intimidated by Harry's orders fled for the open air, leaving 3 or 4 troublemakers to keep circling, deliberately clipping him as they flew past him. "If you don't get out right now," Harry said, "nobody gets a word of advice from me. You understand? I don't care how fucked up your death was or how lost you feel. I'll keep everything I know to myself." The phantoms slowed their flight, exchanging glances that Harry couldn't interpret, and then turned faces to Harry's window and flew directly at the glass and out into the night. The fracas had not gone unnoticed. Or fracas? I think it's fracas. Far from it. Outside, Harry saw that there were spirits converging toward the big room from every compass point. A few came in the company of other wanderers, but most were solitaries. "Okay," Harry said quietly. "Another hit of scotch, then I get going." He returned to his chair, picked up the bottle, opened it, and put it to his lips, pausing for a second or two in sweet anticipation, then took a good-sized hit. "There are worse things I could do with my life," he thought, as he set the bottle down once more. Then he turned to look at the window and caught sight of the most distressing of his visitors he'd yet witnessed. A woman with a child at her side. A boy, Harry thought, though he couldn't be sure as the crowd eclipsed them too quickly. He sat down and surveyed the many faces before him. How many were there now? 40? 50? He wouldn't get through them all tonight. A lot of them would have to wait until tomorrow, by which time, of course, word would have spread and there'd be plenty of new wanderers. No wonder Norma had been so covetous of her brandy and so happy to have her televisions on hand to give her some time to herself and drown out the din of needy souls. There was hectic motion in the crowd, and a child, surely the boy he'd seen with the woman at his side, slipped through. "Welcome," Harry said. "Please come in." "What about my Aunt Anna? She's very well behaved." "She can come too." The boy turned and waved the woman in. She entered, shaking. Funny, Harry had never imagined ghosts did that. "Hello, Anna," he said. "Hello, Mr. D'Amour." "See," the boy said to his aunt, "it's French for love, like I said." I lost my faith for a little while out there," the woman said. "I didn't think there was anybody to help us." "There wasn't for a while," said Harry, "but I'm here now. I see you." And that, my friends, is the end of The Scarlet Gospels by Clive Barker. An incredible read, an incredibly written story, very deep, very meaningful, full of everything you would expect from a horror book, and some surprising little twists here and there. Just mind-blowing. I was not expecting a book where Pinhead actually faces and fights Lucifer himself. That was awesome. So, with that, I'm going to say good day to you. I'm kind of in the mood for playing some games, so I might pop back on in 15 or 20 minutes or sooner and play some games. But that is it. I am going to look around and see what book I'm going to read next. It's probably not going to be a horror book, because I don't want to be typecasted. But yeah, looking into a book that one of my favorite films was based off of, The Hunt for Red October. Totally not a horror book. It's a kind of a military-ish kind of dramatic story. But if you've seen the film, I want to read the book, because I think the book will give us much more detail about the story. So I'm going to be looking into that. Yeah, reading is not for everybody. Audible, that's why the company Audible makes so much money, because people can just pop in an audiobook and get the story. But I totally get that. It takes a lot of patience. Even just reading the thing takes a lot of patience, because you're trying to figure out the words and stuff like that. So I am out of here. I'll be back shortly, I'm thinking. Thanks to everybody who stopped by. Thanks to everybody who was courteous and polite and had good manners. I will see you all most likely tomorrow again, if not a little later on. Thank you, Nakab. Appreciate your input, your conversation. Have a good night. Take care.
Maximus. Maximus.
Quintus. Free my men. Senator Gracchus is to be reinstated. There was a dream that was Rome. It shall be realized. These are the wishes of Marcus Aurelius.
Free the prisoners! Go!
Lucius is safe.
Go to them.
Is Rome worth one good man's life? We believed it once. Make us believe it again. He was a soldier of Rome. Honor him.
Who will help me carry him?
Not yet.